Well, good morning. My name is Bartlett. I get to serve as the Next Gen and Creative Director here at River City, and I'm super honored to be able to lead our students here and just to be able to see the growth that they have had over the last few years. It's just been really special, even dating back to just a few weeks ago, seeing them interact with each other and learn from each other, and even the ones that just raised their hands as kind of a declaration that they wanted to be used by the Lord was just super special. And so it's been a really great couple years that we've been here. And me and my wife came a couple years ago and kind of started off as small group leaders and eventually came into the place that we're at now. And so I was super thankful for her. So I want to take a second to introduce you guys to my family. This is Hannah, and she is the best person on the planet. She's the perfect person to be with me and be alongside of me as we do this together. And the little bald baby up here, his name is Dawson. And Lord willing, he will be the starting point guard for the University of Memphis in 2044. So we're going to try to make that happen. I'm really excited to be able to have the opportunity to close out this series. Because of my background, I've worked in the social media and content space for the last 7 or 8 years, and I've really seen the pros and cons of both of them. I've been able to see the back end and the front end and really see everything that goes into this circle and see how it really consumes our lives. In this constant technology age that we live in is something that's really important for us to grasp. And you may be thinking, okay, well, this isn't a student message. Like, this may be something that you tell your students all the time, but what's crazy is that the data from just this March showed us that teens, the parents of teens, rely on technology just as much as their kids do. And so this is something that everybody is dealing with. It's something that, especially in the last 10 to 15 years, have really ramped up, where we had this constant technology always feeding us things. We're always seeing things. We're always being told what to think about certain things. And so it's a really crazy place to be in. And one thing that's important to note is that technology has a specific impact on who you are becoming. It has a specific impact on who you're becoming, who the people around you are becoming, who your children are becoming. Because we think of this term, discipleship, and you may hear that in spaces like this or in church or in faith circles. And what's really wild about that is we know that to be something that's really intimate. We know it's something that is talked to and walked through with somebody that's really showing you the way, telling you how things are and what to think about certain things and showing the Bible. And in a similar way, we're really getting discipled by the algorithm that we have because we're getting told what to think all the time. We're getting shown certain things all the time. And so when we live in this space, we really need to be proactive and understanding about what's going on day in and day out. And every single time that we're on our devices, we're getting some information. And I'm sure that you guys have noticed by now that there are certain things that people are pushing on us as a society. And for something that tells us how to think, how to live, what's important, what should be important, that you should chase your dreams and do what you want to do. And in a hyper-individualistic culture, this technology that we're having really is shaping and discipling who we are. And it's discipling who we are around. And so it's a big thing, and it's something that we need to focus on. Because in the age, especially in the last 15 years, where this constant technology has been a thing, there's data to back up how this is affecting you and I mentally, how it's affecting the people around you. And so this year, there was a study by the National Library of Medicine focusing on the impact of constant technology. So what it means to be integrated daily, every single day, moment with friends and family, what it means to be impacted by the constant technology that it has on the lives of Americans. And we can see the sense of disconnection in the numbers. We can see how this is impacting us every single day. About 1 in 6 Americans say they feel lonely or isolated from those around them all or most of the time. Not sometimes, but all or most of the time. So in a building and in a church like this, that's about 50 of us in this room. So 50 of us are sitting in a state where we feel isolated, we feel lonely, and it can be a really tricky spot to be in. 1 in 5 adults live with a mental illness, and researchers have estimated, because of the constant technology that we have, that nearly half of the population will experience a mental illness at some point in their life. Because the world that we live in right now is so fast-paced, it's pushing so much information, it's pushing so much news from around the world that, to be quite honest, we weren't designed to see. We weren't designed to be able to have access to every single nation in the world, every single content that's out there, to be able to see what's happening. And so we're getting overloaded by everything that the world, that the content, that we're really getting pushed on. And so because of this constant technology, we're kind of put in this weird space. We're put in a heavy space. And maybe you guys are experiencing that today. Because life is hard. Man, life is crazy. And maybe there's some questions that you're asking yourself. Maybe there's some tests that you're waiting to hear back the results from. Maybe there's some family issues going on. And all of this is just compiling together. Because you guys know this is a tricky spot. It's a tricky world. There's a lot of things going on. And especially in today's culture, there's a lot more to wrestle with. Because there's a lot more being thrown at us, and we have the ability to see all the things that are getting thrown at us. But what these numbers do is it points us to the Word of God. Because what's amazing about this is the science behind these numbers point us to a specific passage that we're going to read, because it talks about how you and I are built, how you and I are designed. Because you and I are designed to be together. You and I are designed to be in a spot where we're able to bounce ideas off of each other, to encourage one another. And in this space and in this culture that's pushing you to do whatever you want to do, to protect your peace, to be able to separate yourself in whatever area that may be, it causes us to live in a hyper-individualistic culture that's all about you. And as we've done that, and as the content has been pushed on us, and as the content supports that thought process, you can see that over the last 10, 15 years, our mental spaces as humans who were created to be together have really suffered from that. We've traded the convenience of being able to do things quickly to being able to reach out to family members, and instead of going and visiting them, we just text them. Instead of wishing grandma happy birthday, we just send them a quick email. We just are able to kind of trade this convenience for really what we were built for. And so the passage that we're going to read really speaks to this. And Paul gives a great illustration and imagery behind why we were built to be together, why it's important for us to be together. And what I want you to realize is that these numbers that we just read, this supports this. And sometimes we can get in a mindset where science and data has its place over here, and then the Bible has its place over here, and we're just kind of going to ignore one or the other. And in the culture, that's kind of what it pushes us to do. But science really just illuminates the Word of God. And the problems that we have as a society, those answers are in the Bible. Those things are here for us to be able to see. And luckily, we have experience from about 2,000 years ago when people were experiencing the same thing. And so Paul writes this letter, and he is writing this letter to Corinth. And in Corinth, it's a big port city. It's a really big, popular city. It's growing. There's a lot of trading there. There's a lot of things that are going on. And in the midst of this, the culture was hyper-individualistic. Sound familiar at all? And so what they did in Corinth was they were building temples to Greek gods and worshiping them and sacrificing, and it was just a really chaotic time. And Paul was with these people for about a year and a half. And so he knew them really well. He knew what they were struggling with. He knew what they were doing. He knew their heart. He knew their mindset about how things were. He knew the culture. And so Paul is writing to them from the church of Ephesus because he heard back some news that things weren't going as planned. In this culture that they were living in, the church was not thriving the way that they were trying to thrive. There was some tension going on, but it was really just the mindset that they needed to have to kind of shift from this idolatry of themselves and their idolatry of putting themselves first. And so we were able to see here what it means to be in a place of community, what it means to be in a place as a church, as a body, and what that does for us. And so I love how Paul really explains this and showcases this because he uses a lot of examples that are relevant 2,000 years later. So he says this in 1 Corinthians 12, starting in verse 12. He says, "For just as the body is one and has many parts, and all of the parts of that body, though many, are one body, so also is Christ. For we were all baptized by one Spirit into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free. We were all given one Spirit to drink. Indeed, the body is not one, but many. If the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I don't belong to the body, it is not for that reason any less a part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I don't belong to the body, it is not for that reason any less part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But as it is, God has arranged each one of the parts of the body just as he wanted. And if they were all the same part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts but one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. Or again, the hand can't say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that are weaker are indispensable, and those parts of the body that we consider less honorable, we clothe these with greater honor. And our unrespectable parts are treated with greater respect, which our respectable parts do not need. Instead, God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the less honorable, so that there would be no division in the body, but that the members would have the same concern for each other. So if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. Now you are the body of Christ and individual members of it. And so this is the goal of the church. We're dependent on another. We are built and placed, and you are here for a specific reason. Because how God has moved in your life, he did for a reason. And so for us to have all these different parts and places and people that are in these seats right now is just a testament to who God is. And that God cares about us. And that God cares about community. And that when you were wired and you were made, you were built to have a sense of community and people around you that are chasing after the same things. When our goals are aligned with one another, when we chase after Jesus together, he says that the people and the places and the things and the skills and the experiences that you have were put together for a reason. And so for us to sit back and say, hey, this is the point. This is the reason. I'm not showing up to church just for me. I'm showing up to church for the people around me. I'm here to serve the body. I'm here to worship the Lord who put us all together for a reason and live in a place and in a community where things are becoming more alive together, because when we're together, it's better. And when we were made in an image of God who lives in community and has forever, it really speaks to who God is and what he wants for us. And as we see in verse 27, our identity is found first in being a member of the body. He says that because God never intended for us to be alone. And so as Paul ends this chapter, he's saying, first, you guys are a member of a body. First, you guys belong to the church. And then, that's the individual members that are made up of it. And so we know that our identity is found first in being a child of God. But it's in this context, our identity is a part of being a church more than it is being an individual. And I know for a lot of us, especially in my generation, we chase that a lot. Because it's really important for us to be able to stand out, and in your job, you really want to showcase what you're doing, and all those things are fine and great. But when we get into spaces like this, and we get into spaces of serving alongside of each other, and why we show up, and the intentions and the posture of our heart, it's really important that we understand, first and foremost, that our identity is being a child of God and being a part of the church first. And so there's three things that I want to cover that really showcase, and how we just looked at in some other verses, of what God-honoring community looks like. And so I want us to really take note of these and understand that this is what Paul was trying to say to the church of Corinth. Number one, everyone is welcomed. He says this in verse 13. Everyone is welcome. Neither Jews nor Greeks, neither slave nor free. Everyone is welcome to be able to come to Jesus, to be able to be a part of the church. And you are welcomed and loved. That's something that's very important. And again, as far as things go, from the society telling us things, it can get into a spot where you may have the mindset, you may be sitting here with the mindset already that, oh, well, the church is not for me. The church is too judgmental. The church is only for a select and certain type of person. And I know that you guys have friends who think that. If there aren't people in the room who think that. But biblically speaking, everyone is welcome to come in. But number two, you become more like Christ. So everyone is welcome in, but you don't stay that way. Our desire is to wrap our arms around the people, especially the people that have been placed in your life for a reason. And we can tell them, hey, I have this hope, I have this joy because of Jesus. And I want you to experience that. And so as you are welcomed into this moment, we want to welcome you in, but also to show you there's something better for you. Because in this process, we're becoming more like Jesus. And I want you to come alongside me and chase after Jesus with me, because we don't stay the same. And as he's transforming our hearts, after we put our authority in Jesus, under Jesus, that's when he begins to change our lives. Hebrews says this in Hebrews 10:24. It says, let us consider one another in order to provoke love and good works. When we're together, we're better. Not neglecting to gather together, as some of us are in the habit of doing, but encouraging each other, and all the more as you see the day approaching. So right here again, we're called to build each other up. Once everyone's welcome, we're called to become more like Jesus together. And we do that in the sense of community. We do that in a place where the people who are around you are chasing after the same things. We have community groups here that are in places and in spaces because you guys are in groups that are in the same stage of life and hopefully chasing after the same thing. And as we do that as a community and as a church, it's super important that we find our identity in that. Number 3, we do this together. In Galatians 6, it says this, it says, carry one another's burdens. And this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. We are to be there for one another. We are to experience things together. But you can't experience things with people that you don't know. You can't experience things with people that you're not connected with. If you never talk to, see, care, try to understand people and why they're here and what led them here and their background, then it's really hard for us to have a deep connection with somebody. And as we saw in the numbers, how constant technology has really shaped us is in this third point, because we are struggling as a society and as a Big C church to do things together, to be plugged in, to show up at people's houses, to physically say, hey, I'm here for you. And this is what we're called to do because this is what Jesus did and what Jesus cares about. And in the end of this verse, he says to fulfill the law of Christ, and that seems like a pretty big deal. That seems like something that we need to underline and really focus on, because I don't know about you guys, but to fulfill the law of Christ and to fulfill what he has for you and me is a priority. And so we see that by doing what God cares about, being a part of community, being a part of church, not showing up just for you, but showing up for the people around you, showing up for the opportunity to pour into people's lives, to understand, to build connection. And so it's super important that we understand this, because that's what we were built for. That's what we were designed for. And as a culture and as a society and as you individually see that when you stray and the culture strays from what God's designed for us, we just kind of get more mentally in a frenzy. It's just not how we're supposed to be, because we're living in ways that are contrary to what we were designed to live in. And what I want us to understand is the importance of community is so great because Jesus speaks to this. Paul speaks to this. This is what we were built to do, to come together. I want to tell you guys a quick story. About 9 years ago, I had an opportunity to go to a mission trip in Belize. And as we were getting ready for it, they were, handing out the pamphlets. We had the meetings, all the fun stuff. We were going to go lead a VBS for the kids there. We were going to stay at the church and just have a really good time. The last day, it was like we were staying we knew it was kind of a rough part going into it. But for the first 9 days, we stayed there. And the last day, the goal was to go to like one of the touristy spots and really see the nice side of Belize. So as a 16-year-old, I did love Jesus. I did want to talk to the kids, but I was like, hey, here's an opportunity for me to go to Belize as well. So let's hop on the plane and zoom along. So we get there, and pretty quickly we understand, like, okay, this is a pretty rough spot. This is kind of the third world part. This is not the best thing to do. Maybe it is, but like I said, we have information. So I hopped on Google and looked at the village we were going to, and there was about 3 murders the month before we got there. And so I was just super pumped. And we got there, and it was like, hey, you guys are going to stay in the church, and it'll be great. And I was like, okay, I've slept on the floor before. We'll be cool. So we hop off the plane. We take a 2-hour bus ride, dirt roads. It's fantastic. And then we get to the church. And The pamphlets were a little misleading because the church did not have walls. The church had nothing around it besides bushes keeping it in place, and then it was like a massive carport and a bunch of plastic chairs that the church sat in. And so we had to call an audible really quickly. We had to figure out where we were going to stay because we just flew, we hopped here. Obviously, we're not staying at the church because a lot of things can happen outside in Belize. And so we ended up going to the pastor's house, and they weren't really ready for us. We weren't really ready for them. It was kind of a little chaotic, but it was great. The Lord moved and all that fun stuff. If you know me, I'm a very picky eater. So I lost about 10 pounds in 9 days because I wasn't eating much and I wasn't sleeping much. And so by the time that we got to this place, we went to one of the islands that was just, like I said, one of the touristy islands. And by the time we got there, I was just ready to go to bed. I was ready to find air conditioning and I was ready to sleep. And so we got to the island and we walked around. It was kind of a short spot. I walked around, saw everything, and I was like, all right, guys, this is fantastic. I'm going to go back to the hotel that has air conditioning and go to sleep. So I went back to the hotel. I proceeded to sleep 18 hours in a row. I don't know how that happened. Never done it before or since then. But I was so tired and drained, I slept 18 hours. They woke me up and said, hey, it's time to go home. And I was like, all right. So I packed my bags really quickly, and we were off. And so as we were on the bus ride, we were heading back to the airport to go back home after a great week. But what happened was all of my friends that were on the trip and the people around me were coming up to me and said, hey, look what we were doing. We were snorkeling. We went to eat at this place. We experienced this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm probably never going to come back to Belize again. And I just slept through it all. I just missed everything that was happening. I had an opportunity to go snorkeling with some sharks and didn't do that. I had an opportunity to go to some gift shops and spend way too money and I didn't do that. And I had some different opportunities that I probably will never have again. And I slept through it all. And I feel like a lot of us are in that space. I feel like a lot of us are seeing what God is doing and seeing what God is doing in the people around us, but we're not experiencing it. And seeing it on a phone is a lot different than experiencing it in real life. And so as community and church goes, I feel like a lot of us are in this space where we're just seeing how God is working in the world and we're just watching it. And it's something for us to consider and to monitor for something that Jesus cares and loves so deeply about. It's probably something that we should hop into. It's probably something that we should prioritize. And it's not something that we just need to sit back and watch happen. Because since the book of Acts, God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, their plan for the world is the church, is the Big C church. And he will use the Big C church until he comes back. And for us to understand the importance to hop into that plan and to see how God is doing and what he's doing in the world, it's super important for us to be able to understand that. And I don't know if you guys know, but especially in the Gen Z generation, there are a lot of questions getting asked right now. There are what they're calling a quiet revival. Not something that's happened before where things are kind of taking a lot of traction, but we have seen an uptick in Gen Z and their desire to understand that there's something more out here. There's something more to just waking up and going to school or waking up and going to work, trying to make as much money we can, going to sleep, and being done with it. In the age that we're living in, because of this constant technology that we have, people are asking more questions than ever. And so we need to hop in and understand that, hey, the church is how we're going to reach these people because we need to be there with open arms. Everyone's welcome. We need to be there and transformed by Jesus where, hey, we can talk to you about what's going on. We have answers to these questions. We understand what you're going through. Because I believe the scariest place to be as a Christian is to see what God is doing and not be a part of it. We can see how God is working. We can see in the numbers, we can see in the science, we can see in the world, we can see in the culture of how he's working and how he's speaking to people, and we need to be the ones that are there and ready for them. We need to be the ones who are actively chasing them. And as a community, as you've rooted yourself in community, you've done that together. Because we're there to uplift another. We're there to be there together, to encourage another, to mourn together. And it's super important because how God is moving and how he uses that is something that we need to pay attention to. And what Jesus finds important, we should find important. And so I want to ask you a simple question. What would change about your life if you didn't have to do it alone? What would change about your life if you don't have to do it alone? Because everything that we read, everything that we see is that it's just you, my guy. It's just you. That's it. You gotta make the job happen. You gotta get what you want. You gotta go chase your dreams. You gotta go grind and get what you want. It's just this individualistic culture where it's just you. And it feels very isolating because we're in a spot where you look around and I don't know if I can do that. And you can't. That's the point. That's what Paul says. You can't do it by yourself, and that's why we need each other. And so I want us to actively think about what life would look like if we came to the realization that we don't have to do this alone. And this takes intentionality. This takes focus, and it takes time, and it takes something that you may need to sacrifice, but I'm telling you guys that it's something that you are looking for, especially as believers. This is it. Because like I said earlier, we're designed for certain things and we don't walk in the way that we're designed to have. It can get a little tricky really fast. And we know something is missing. And as believers, we know that there's something that we can step into. We know that the Lord is moving and will continue to work. And how are we going to hop into that? What are we going to do to minister to the people around us and the community that you've been placed in? I tell this to our students all the time. I'm not trying to pull out another data piece on you guys, but at any given moment in time around your life, on average, there's about 150 people that you can maintain a close relationship with. There's about 150 people that you talk to monthly. It's coworkers, it's family, it's friends, it's kids, it's parents. So these 150 that you have in your life, how are you ministering to them? How are you inviting them in? How are you showing the love of Jesus to them? Are you guys doing community together? When you guys are together, are you talking about what the Lord is doing in your life and how we can hop in on what he's doing in the world? It's an important question. And for the people who are in the room who are still trying to figure out this Jesus thing, the same thing of how you were wired up, where you're trying to figure out what's missing, and you've tried to get the house, and you've gotten the car, and you've gotten the kids, and you've gotten the job that you were searching for, and you just keep piling it on, and you're trying to figure out, why is it only okay for a little bit of time? Why is it something that only satisfies for just a couple months? Why is this something that I can't figure out? And just like as Christians, we're built for community, you were built with a throne's place in your heart. And we've tried to fill that with several things. And most of us try to fill it with ourselves. But if we can't do life alone, then we can't lead our life alone. We can't do something to just give us purpose on our own. Because as you've seen and as you know and as you've lived enough life to know that that's not it. That's not what provides us with purpose and joy and peace. And so I want us to think about what spot in your heart needs to be filled, especially as unbelievers. Because as we see here, there is someone who came and died for you and loved you enough to come and grab you and say, hey, I have a plan for you. I want to rescue you. I don't want you to live in this way that you weren't designed to live anymore. I want you guys to experience who I am and understand that you guys have a purpose. You have a plan, and in him you can find that. And when we continue to search for that, we're wondering and we're searching and we keep trying to plug in things to that spot. And hopefully, today's the day where you're asking questions and you're trying to figure out what all this is, why we're here. And there's nothing that we can do better than to tell you that there's a God who loves you and a God who came down and sent his son to die for you, and that he has a plan for you. That's the hope that we are meant to tell you about. And so we want to care about what Jesus cares about, and that's the people that are here who don't know him. And for the believers, that's for us to be in community with one another. And so I want us to really understand this. I really want us to prioritize this and think and reflect as we sing this song, what it means to live in godly community, what it means to base your life around something and someone who died for you and created you. Because like I said, in this culture, it's so focused on you. It's so focused on what you can get and what you can want. And I know that you've experienced it in your life and in the people around you, that that's not enough. Because that's not what God designed us to be. And so I want us to encourage us to come together, to plug in, to understand that what we were built for is something greater than you can imagine. What we're built for, and when we step into the purpose that God has for us, is anything better than what you've been placing on the throne in your life. And so when we come to that conclusion, our lives begin to change. We become more like Christ by doing what he loves. And that's being together. Let's pray.